Good morning, India time. Good afternoon, Korea time. And good late night, America time. Today is October 2nd, Gandhi Jayanti, the birthday of Mahatma Gandhi, celebrated as International Day of Peace and Non-Violence across the world. On this occasion, what we thought would be appropriate to hold a discussion around Gandhiji and see where can it be applied in a case study format anywhere in the globe as of today. So one area we zeroed down to was Korea. Why not look at the Korean Peninsula? It has several issues. And what could be the relevance of Gandhian principles in the Korean Peninsula for, let's say, peace, non-violence, and happiness? And we are lucky and fortunate to have a great colleague from there who will be joining us for this discussion, and also Dr. Lakhvinder Singh. And also, we will have our from Seoul, director of the Asia Peace Institute. At the same time, we will have our another colleague, Dr. Gurpreet Chawla from California. She is an provider of language services to presidents and prime ministers. At the same time, she is a global ambassador for the Live and Let Live campaign. So I'll be welcoming these two wonderful personalities for what I hope would be a very stimulating discussion, given the brilliance of minds that we'll have there. So without much ado, let me welcome Dr. Lakhvinder Singh and Dr. Gurdeep Chawla. Hello guys, good morning, good evening, good afternoon.
Good
Hello,
evening
sir.
from
Sat Sri Akal ji. How are you?
All good, all good.
good evening
Thank
from
you.
So
California. How are you, everybody?
great to see you, Gurdeep. Great not to see you, hear you, but thank you for joining. It's late night your time, we understand, in California. Good afternoon, Dr. Lakhvinder Singh.
Many thanks for having me today.
Sure. So let me lay out the format of the discussion, which we'll be looking at today, which is about Gandhi in the Korean Peninsula. I think it should be a very interesting topic, and you are an expert on peace and Gandhian philosophy. For the benefit of our viewers, Dr. Lakhvinder Singh, as I mentioned, is director of the Asia Institute of Peace in Seoul. He holds two PhDs, one from India, JNU, and another from Korea in Korea. So he's a specialist on Korean affairs also, at the same time as expert on Gandhian philosophy principles also. So it will be a great discussion we look forward to. We'll talk about relevance of Gandhiji in the Korean Peninsula. We mean South Korea mainly because that's what we know more of, but includes North also. And how could some initiatives be there between the South and the North to promote peace? What are some aspects of Gandhism which are relevant for Korean society? By the way, the Korean society is a very stressed out society also. I mean, all societies are, but Korea has its own nuances. And we'll also touch on Korea-India relations in a broader context, broader strategic context, because Dr. Lakhvinder Singh is also an expert on defense and security affairs. I'm joined with my colleague, Dr. Gurdeep Chawla, who is, as I mentioned, a language services provider to presidents and prime ministers for the last so many years. And she's also a global brand ambassador of the Live and Let Live campaign. The Live and Let Live campaign is a global campaign in a soft mode right now, where we are promoting the basic philosophy that one of the only or best ways for many of the ills facing our society is to live and let live. As in live and let live with the people, and also live and let live with the environment. As we've seen, environment, we have to live and our environment also let live. So that being said, uh, I'll invite you, Lakhvinder, to first share with our viewers why do you think that Gandhiji and Gandhian principles of philosophy can be so appropriate, of value, of use to South Korea? We'll begin with South Korea. If you can give an overview in about 2 or 3 minutes, we look forward to your thoughts.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank you for making me the part of your Live and Let Live campaign. I think this is a very important campaign, and I feel very honored to be part of such important campaign, especially on such an important day when we are celebrating Gandhi birthday today. So this is double honor for me. I think why we should study Gandhiji in the context of South Korea. I think it's because South Korea is very presents a very important contest. What happens when Gandhian principle not followed? What happens to a society which completely ignore Gandhian principle and decide to go take a high road to progress and prosperity? So it presents a lot of case studies to us to study that why Gandhian principle are relevant today and how South Korean people can go some of their problem which are facing Korean society today. So for last couple of years, I'm trying to put forward my case that Gandhi is the answer to most of the problem Korean society is facing today. As we go by, we will study some of the problem which Korean society is facing today and how Gandhi principle can solve to some extent current problem being faced by Korea, be it economic, be it social, be it security, almost everything. I don't know many people will like to agree with me or not, but I strongly believe that Gandhi is the answer of the most of the problem which Korean society is facing today. Thank you very much.
So fair enough. Thank you very much. You made a wonderful opening and context. Uh, let's pick up strands one by one because there's a lot of areas which can be covered in this context. Let us start with uh, within the Korean society. Let's say keep us. So we'll talk about Korean society. We'll talk about North and South, right? That piece that's separate. Right now, within Korean society, why do you think? What are some of the specific Gandhian principles that can be applied to solve some of the specific challenges like stress or what amongst the youth, let's say. Okay, so if there is stress amongst the youth or stress amongst the professionals, Korean professionals, what
Yes.
specific Gandhian principles can be applied to mitigate that stress?
Okay. Let me start with my own example. When I was in JNU, I was studying international politics. I have a lot of choice, but Professor Sondi, my Guruji, advised me to study Korea. And one of the reasons he chose Korea was that time Korea was a prime example of progress, prosperity, and how a third world country can become rich. So I was like any young man, I was lured to Korean progress, Korean prosperity, and Korean growth story. At that time, Korea was called miracle on the Han River. It was a miracle that how such a poor society can become rich so fast. So it's a miracle which attracted people like me to come to Korea. So we used to, wow, Korea is our role model. Korea is our example of where how can and we can also learn lesson from Korea and apply to our country. And around those times, lot of people, lot of scholars, lot of professors used to come to Korea to study Korean model. I was not the only one. There are hundreds of other professors who landed in Korea to study Korean model of economic story, economic growth. So Korea's
Hmm.
charm, Korea's attractiveness was such a huge. So, but unfortunately, as the time passes by and we mature, a lot of side effects of the miracle started appearing, in Korean society. And
Okay.
we suddenly feel that it may not be miracle as we thought. Now time has come when they come. Now they use new term hell on the Han River. Hell. So Korea for a miracle, Korea has become hell. So lot of young people are leaving Korea. Migration of Korea, young people are leaving. It is becoming very difficult to have a university degree, to have a job, to have a wife, to have a house. All the dreams which a young man uh, have when he starts his life is becoming more and more difficult. Education has become too expensive. Houses have become too expensive. Getting a job has become too expensive. Having a children have become too expensive. So no more miracle anymore. It has become hell, hell on the Han River. So Recently, one professor wrote a book on the hell Chusen. It means Korea has become hell. Lot of stress, lot of suicides are happening in Korea. So
Yes.
we have to study what does happen when a society try to become so rich so fast, when it ignores everything, when it ignores all the principle of self-discipline, of ends and means, of cottage industry. Whatever Gandhiji teaches, was completely dumped into a dustbin, and a high road was taken to build a
Dr.
Korean society,
Ravinder,
to build a new
Dr.
Korea.
Ravinder, yeah, thanks. So understand you that due to all the stress and all the what can be applied is mentioned, some aspect of self-discipline industry and all. So you think that those are some principles which can be a part of solution to the stress there?
I'm sorry to tell you that I cannot listen to your voice clearly. So, but I heard a little bit, so I will try to answer.
Sure, is
Uh,
it better now?
your voice was a little bit wavering, so it was not clear.
Sure, please continue. I mean, the question is that, so given the stress in Korean society, which of the Gandhian principles you think should be more promoted in Korea?
Okay, let me tell you one on one. Now, Gandhiji was against the globalization, extreme globalization. Gandhi was talking about village republic, but Korea went for extreme globalization, and it hurt Korean society very hardly. And Gandhi was talking about cottage industry, but and Korea went for massive industrialization, mass industrialization. So it destroyed, it had the Korean society at too much high level. So what happened? Korean family was destroyed, Korean culture was destroyed,
Got
and Korean almost everything was affected by extreme industrialization, extreme. And Gandhi was talking about ends and means, but all everything was ends means was completely ignored. It doesn't matter how you become rich, you should become rich. So there is massive exploitation of Korean worker, especially female worker. Korean worker was forced to work uh, 13, 14 hours a day, or even for 15 or 16 hours a day. So
Mhm.
extreme exploitation of worker, completely ignored what Gandhi was trying to tell. What happens when you ignore the means and just focus on ends? No,
So
and now even
now,
now, yes,
yeah, now with COVID, for example, I mean, there's been a lot of reflection. Everyone in this planet is, I think, in an introspective mode often, right? And people are kind of thinking through life, maybe. So, do you see any change in the life world views of Koreans happening due to the COVID? Because this may have acted as a trigger for them to go back to the basics, like every society, country, maybe.
yes, of course, COVID is a kind of having some good effect on the Korean people. Now they're thinking that everything is not a globalization. Sometimes they have
Mhm.
to now. So they are now for the last 2 3 months, all the flights are cut off. So Korean people are not going out, outside are not coming. So, but Korean people have done very well. So that fear that Korea will collapse if they cut off the world is not true. Now slowly and slowly, Gandhian principle that Korea is self-dependent society, self-independent society, that it can survive without any international trade, international commerce, and international exchanges. Korea is a
Sure.
full-fledged sovereign state. It can survive. But so much
Sure.
the political leadership created such a fear among the people that without globalization, without mass industrialization, we cannot survive. To some extent, COVID has taught a very good lesson to Korean people that Korea can survive
Thank you.
massive
Okay.
globalization.
Sure. Thank you. We have several topics, so we will move on to the next topics. But I will round off this round with a little observation, and then I'll invite Dr. Gurdeep Chawla to maybe also ask me a couple of questions or comment on what Dr. Ravinder was saying. Before I hand over to Dr. Gurdeep, my question or my summary of our this round of discussion was that Korean society in stress due to, all of these issues are everywhere in the world, by the way, Dr.
Hello, sir. Your
So,
voice is still wavering. Please fix it.
uh, is it better now?
Yes, a little bit better, but it's better if you can fix it.
Let me see. Fixing it, I'll have to reload. If we can. My summary is that these issues are there in Korean society, and as you mentioned, that chasing globalization too hard and privatization too hard, and some aspects of Gandhism can be applied there. Okay, would you have any comments or any questions before we move on to the round?
I think the connection is pretty bad, but I'm thinking you asked me to say something, so I'm going to ask. Lakwinder ji, you have really raised very good points about how the society in Korea is been impacted by too much, too fast kind of economy, and not following what
Doesn't matter if
Gandhi
we
had.
restart. I'll say this again. Doesn't matter. Technical issues at times. So just bear with me a moment. Hello, are we there?
Yes.
Yes,
Is it better now?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, actually, broadband. I'm using my data. Anyway, so the first round about Gandhism in Korean society, I think we got some flavor. Gurdeep, if you would have any questions or comments, and then we move on to how can Gandhism be applied between the North and South Korea.
Yeah, I mean, as Lakwinder was saying, that it's what made the Korean society suffer was too much, too fast kind of thing, and not following what they initially set up to start with, Gandhi's vision of cottage industry and all of that. But I was also curious about other things that Gandhiji has taught. What impact did it have on Korea, like non-violence and self-reliance and all that? What do you think of that in terms of Korea? How much and how far have they adapted that?
Okay, very good question. Basically, as you know, Korea started like just like a very poor country, but somehow political leadership decided that they cannot build a new Korea just by depending on themselves. So, starting from small, earlier Korea was called a hermit kingdom. Hermit kingdom means they never entered with anybody, only depended on themselves, complete 100% self-reliance. So, but after the independence, they got convinced that Korea is poor. Korea became a slave country. Korea became colony, only because they are not interacting with the world. So, as a policy decision, they dumped their own self-reliant mechanism and economy. So they was convinced that Korea became a colony of Japan because they were not adopting new technology, new knowledge from the outside world. So they had some bad experience of self-reliance. So when Korea had an opportunity, they dumped every self-discipline. They went too fast to the other side. Earlier, they was too much dependent on themselves, too much close to the world, but suddenly they opened too much to the world. It was from one side to another side, extreme. Both of us extreme. So we could not face a kind of balance between two extremes. That is one of the core problems which I feel Korea made a huge mistake. Now, Korean society has suffered a lot. Nobody want to have children. Nobody want to have a house. Nobody want to have so such a horrible life. As a Korean young man, see there are a lot of Korean young men, yeah, living Korea. They don't see their future bright here. So it's a very bad. It's very. I was trying to raise my family in Korea, but unfortunately, my children are not so enthusiastic. When I came to Korea as a young man, I was full of dreams of Korea. But as I grow my children in Korea, but my children are not so much happy that they want to have a life in Korea. So there's a huge difference. Just one generation, one extreme to another generation.
Very interesting, Dr. Lakwinder. See, the point is, I mean, in a sense, the challenges that you describe are the challenges which are there in every country, by the way, right? Every country has these challenges, but Korea becomes a very interesting example of a very intense society and searching for way ahead. Thank you. Dr. Gurdeep, would you have any other next comment or observation or a question? And then we move on to the next topic.
I think we can move on to the next topic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Lakhvinder ji. Now, the next topic for a few minutes is, let's say, North and South Korea, the
Yes.
Korean Peninsula. How can we be looking at, applying, and what could be some of the principles that can be applied to build peace between North and South? I mean, it's a very tedious task. There is no silver bullet, right? But what do you think could be some things which can contribute to an enabling environment for peace and reconciliation between the North and the South?
Okay, as you're asking me, and I will apply Gandhian principle,
Yes,
But
yes.
even though many people in Korea, in the USA, in other countries, don't believe that Gandhian principle can solve the conflict between North or South Korea, but if you ask me, I would say Gandhiji is the only solution. Now, core problem between North and South.
Dr. Lapinder ji, that is why we are holding this conversation today
Thank you.
around the Live and Let Live campaign. So let us
Yes,
maybe seed and start an initiative to apply more and more Gandhian principles between the North and South in the coming months and years. So this is
yes.
the beginning of that step. Please, on to
Okay,
you.
okay. I will try to build a small paradigm. How can we work on it? Okay, let me start from the basics. Basic is that why South and North Korea are fighting? They are fighting because they don't trust each other. Trust factor is the core problem. Now, Gandhiji, when they build a moral principle, moral politics, that until we follow Gandhi principle and then means and trust politics, then North Korea problem cannot be solved. And Gandhi was dead against nuclear weapon. And but now, even though North South Korea don't have a nuclear weapon, but South Korea is fully weaponized because American weapons are here. American weapon it may not be here, but Americans can bring nuclear weapons to come to Korean Peninsula anytime. So until we follow Gandhian principle that nuclear weapons or nuclear destruction is a evil's work, it's Satan's work. This cannot be done. So some kind of moral principle, some kind of basic trust factor has to be brought into the picture. Until we don't believe some try to build a moral society as prescribed by Gandhiji, when both North Korea and South Korea trust each other and try to build a God-based, moral-based society, this cannot be done because no matter how many you try to give and take, carrot and the other things, all these things don't apply. The only thing which can solve is the trust. Trust can be built by when you trust, you have a belief in each other. You have to have. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Without Gandhiji's politics of moral politics, Gandhi means that ends politics. You cannot convince North Korea to give up its nuclear weapon. Until North Korea don't give up on there will be no nuclearization. So India is the candidate to play that role because we are a
Okay.
country. We are coming from a very strong moral background. We are a history of Mahatma Buddha and Gandhiji. So we have a lot of moral credentials, and we don't have any our own axe to grind. So and we have a very strong relationship with North and South Korea. So if we come to picture and try to play a more active role, both North and South Korea should trust us. So we are the you can say God-given player in the Korean Peninsula. But so far, unfortunately, our politicians and as well as our diplomats not accepted the opportunity available to us. I haven't for the last few years. I have been trying to advocate to our policymakers that we should play an active role in peace building on Korean Peninsula. Why? Because only we can do it. Because only we have Mahatma Gandhi. Only we have Buddha. We have strong peace credentials. And only we played such a role during the Korean War. So we should not deny ourselves. And
But
Korea is very important.
But
Yes.
see, there are two things here, Dr. Lakwinder. One is that yes, India should play a role, and India could play a role, and we have the moral credentials.
Mm,
But let's say minus India also,
mm,
can, let's say, whatever some of the Gandhian principles, like you mentioned, first of all, trust. Okay, building trust.
mm.
Can some of these things can be done between the North and South, minus
Yes.
India?
Yes, can be done. Yeah, of course, why not? But the problem is that there's a problem. It can be done if there's at least 1% trust each other. You have to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere. Then they can start trusting each other. Trust not come for. You cannot buy trust with the money. You have to start mutually, slowly, slowly. It is a very slow working process. And when it is slow working process, it has to somebody has to trust somebody. Now North Korea has too much to lose if it start trusting South Korea. So that is why South Korea should trust first. So until South Korea don't trust first, North Korea will never trust. So my thesis to advice to Korean politician and Korean policymakers is that you should trust. So you should trust North Korea first.
I see. That's a pretty okay and a pretty interesting point that you're making.
Yes.
Uh, Gurdeep, Dr. Chawla, are we better on the sound issues?
Yes, yes, we're much better. I can hear you
Thank
now.
you. Thank you. Uh, okay, so you heard what Dr. Lakhvinder ji was saying. Would you
Mm-hmm.
have any thoughts and comments? I think he made a very beautiful point from a very high level that firstly, yes, trust has to be there. And on that also, he's giving a practical point that the trust would have to start from South Korea. That's a big picture point.
True.
Anyway, what are your any thought or any question or comment would you have, please?
So, Lakundaji, my main thing is, what role can India play today in bringing peace there? And I mean, of course, in universal brotherhood and everything we believe in, Vasudev Kutumbakam and everything that we talk about, the Prime Minister of India talks about all the time. Even in the United Nations, this word Vasudev Kutumbakam, the whole world is one family, resonates, every so often. So,
Yes.
what role is India going to play in terms of Korea,
Not
and
going to play,
uniting
should
it?
play. I can talk about going to. I'm not sure they are going to play it, but I can talk about what they should do. You
Uh
know,
huh.
it's just a proposal. Let me tell you when our Modi ji was selected for Peace Prize, no, Soul Peace Prize. There was a reason for it. Reason is that Koreans are looking towards India to play more active role. At that time, I published a lot of articles in the media. I gave a lot of interviews in the media, and I was a main person, who was trying to pick up from there, but pick up the signals which Korea was giving to us. And I try to talk to our diplomats. I try to convince our president that its time has come when we should become active. Koreans are giving very clear signals to us that they cannot do it without ourselves. But they cannot invite us openly because Korea is part of a bloc, power politics. So there's limit to which Korean can openly invite us. So, but as a country of peace, as a country of Gandhiji, as a country of Mahatma Buddha, we have to come here by ourselves. Don't look for an official invitation. This is my first. This is my first request to our officials or diplomats. Don't look for an official invitation to come and play a peaceful role. They have already given enough non-official signals to Korean people, Indian people, that please come and do help us. We need help. Now, what we can do, we can start from anywhere. We can start advocating nuclear-free zone Korea. Nuclear weapon-free zone Korea, and we can start negotiating some simple things like agriculture cooperation, or tourism cooperation, or technology cooperation. We can start from anywhere. There are a million things we can start slowly. So then we can pick up unification issues. Then we can pick up nuclear war issues. We can start from smaller issues and then bigger issues. And we don't need to wait. We are Gandhiji. We are a Mahatma Buddha. Mahatma Buddha don't ask somebody to go there. Mahatma Buddha never asked to, should I come to you and preach peace? They themselves go. So we should come here by ourselves and start preaching idea of peace. So yes.
That's a very interesting point you're saying, Dr. Lakhvinder, that, Buddha, he went himself, wherever. Uh, or like Gandhiji, he went, for example, right? So you're suggesting and we are advocating that, India should, yes, take the initiative and India is, of course, I mean, in a broader spectrum, we would say that a lot is already happening between India and Korea. But I think probably what we are discussing here today is a little bit helping to accelerate this momentum, especially on the ideas of peace and live and let live.
Yes.
which could, be beneficial values uh, with Korea, within Korea, and in the Korean Peninsula, as well as for Korea-India relations.
Yes.
Gurdeep ji, would you have any? Would you have a question or a comment? I know you have to run or maybe run to sleep. Uh,
No.
soon. Okay. Would you have any comment or a question? And then I think
Yeah.
we'll move to the next round, and the next round would be more on strategic and defense affairs.
No, just this live and let live, because we are running this big campaign all over India and all over the world. And we want this live and let live campaign to be successful, because we believe very strongly that this is something that has to start at a very very young age, when this as child starts his school. That's when this whole concept of live and let live should be taught to students. And that's one way to stop bullying, and to stop bullies becoming terrorists in the future. And if you're familiar with that concept, would you think that can be taken there in Korea as well? And do you think people will pay heed to that?
Of course, of course. That's the whole idea. That's what we are talking
It's
today.
one thing to say, we are the Buddha and we are Mahatma Gandhi and they don't need permission. Yes, we don't. But do you think they will be adaptive to it?
Of course, they need it. That's what I think you missed my point. You missed my point. Koreans have given lot of signals that we need your help. Peace process in Korea has collapsed. A nuclear war can destroy everything, not only just Korean Peninsula, but the whole region. Korean people, especially South Korean president, understand the gravity of the situation. He did his best to build peace with South Korea, with North Korea, but unfortunately, world politics came into play. The whole process collapsed. But they understand the gravity of the situation. They want to live, and they also want North Korea to live. So this live and let live is basically being applied to Korean Peninsula, especially by the current Korean president. He's working very hard that South Korea should progress, North Korea should progress, everybody should be win-win situation. So actually, North Korea, this 11 little philosophy is already being applied by our president in Korea. He tried very very hard to have a kind of peace understanding with North Korea.
Hmm.
But somehow, power politics, international power politics, China, USA, they come into the play. They started playing their own politics, and then the whole thing. But if you come to Korea with a campaign, they will immediately, believe me, I will tell you, they will immediately embrace it because they
Great.
already trying to kind of have understanding. Already understand to have this kind of campaign. Recently, we did a study. What will happen if there is a nuclear war in Korean Peninsula? So, a study told us that almost 80% people in Seoul will be killed. So, it will have a devastating impact of the nuclear war. So they understand. They understand what does it mean to have a nuclear war on Korean Peninsula. And the whole nuclear winter will spread all over Northeast Asia. Not only Korea Peninsula, Japan, Vietnam, Philippines, everywhere will be affected. Even India will be affected. Our crop system, our monsoon system will be affected. So nobody can escape from this. And Korean people know it. Do you think President Moon is making such a sincere and such a dedicated effort to build peace? No, they know what it means if there's a war on Korean Peninsula. So even though they don't call it live and let live, but they're trying to embrace this principle already. So if you
Great.
come to Korea, they will immediately hug you.
That
So
is
we
a
will be
great,
at home there. Great. Thank you.
yeah.
Yes, yes.
That was a great question, Dr. Chawla, Gurdeep. And I think it's kind of, converge some maybe, see, we
We
are a
can't
think
hear
tank,
anything.
which is, of course, exactly, we can take initiatives and all, and we do, I mean, we just don't sit back and reflect and talk. We try and do things also, right? So on this live and let live and the bullying thing in school, so maybe that could be something we could, progress further, Dr. Lakwinder saying, and explore how to, start promoting this campaign, at least among schools and colleges. And as you said, the issue of trust between North and South, live and let live is about trust also. It is about trusting that I will live and I will let the other
No,
live
I
also.
think I did not address the second part of the question. Live and let live. Let me tell you, currently Korea has one of the highest suicide rate in in the schools in the world because there's a lot of depression. lot of stress in Korean. So live and let campaign is very very suitable for Korean society. So it will work not only at international level, at the state to state level, but also domestically. It will work very very effectively because Korea is under a lot of stress. You know, in the schools, in the factories, the houses, everywhere, it will be embraced. So it has a lot of potential to get accepted by Korean society, not only domestically but as well as internationally. Yes.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you
I
so much. That was wonderful.
Yeah, that was wonderful. I think we are having maybe some sound issues, but let's continue. Unfortunately, we are there's some broadband issue maybe, but I hope it goes through. Now, the next round, overall context. I think we've now touched already, Korea-India relations and all. Uh, from a strategic point of view, Dr. Lakwinder Singh, let's say China. Now we are moving towards defense, security, or strategic affairs. But in strategic affairs, also, of course, we look to see what Gandhian principles we can push for. But firstly, what do you see the current situation as? What is the current picture between China and Korea and India? If you can, in a few minutes, a couple of minutes, throw light on that, then we will see that in this current picture, what can Gandhian principles live and let live, whatever can be applied. So the first part of this is that if you can paint a certain overall picture right now of China, Korea, India relations,
Okay.
and we can see.
Okay. Here also I don't have a happy report to present. Situation is very grim, and
Okay, guys, we are getting some comments from viewers who are seeing, for example, so I brought up their comments. So, like Ashwini Kumar, he's actually in the US, I think, uh, and he just posted excellent listening to us. So, these comments are coming in, and we'll
thank
keep.
you.
So, viewers, please put in your questions. By the way, yes, listeners and viewers, please put in your questions so that we can answer or help answer your questions. Or we have an eminent panel experts here diving deep in. So please do put in your comments and thoughts, and we will try to answer. Thank you. Yes, Dr. Singh.
Okay. Here and here also I don't have a happy presentation to say, but as you know, the balance of power in East Asia is shifting very fast. So the recent modernization of Chinese Navy is changing everything. It's changing everything. It's putting a lot of stress on Korea, a lot of stress on Japan, a lot of stress on India. But we don't have that kind of resources. We don't have that kind of just uh, know-how to match China militarily. Now, security structure set up by USA after the World War has maintained peace for the last 60, 70 years. But now, because of some domestic reasons, USA is just not able to keep the security posture which is trying to maintain for last 70 years. Now, if USA is forced to leave, how can we maintain peace? How can we match China? Can we, now the first question come to us: can we face China militarily? No. We simply why? Because we simply don't have that kind of funds available to us. Number two, we simply don't have that kind of technology available to us. Number third, we simply don't have that kind of political system. China is a dictatorship. They can concentrate whole of thing on security, but we are democracy. We have better things to attend: economic development, poverty, youth. We have so many things, but China is just focused on only one thing: expanding their influence outside the world. So we cannot match China. So that's what I'm saying. To some extent, we have to apply Gandhian principle to maintain peace in the region. No? If we come into picture, if I bring the Gandhi principle of peace, non-violence, and try to do the conflict resolution through peaceful means, lot of problems can be solved. Why? Because even Chinese don't want war with us, not with Asia. Because war in the region will also, in fact, hurt Chinese economy as well as Indian economy. So to say that Chinese want war is not necessarily. So if we can use Gandhi's principle of conflict resolution, non-violence, and conflict resolution, it can help everybody, including Chinese. So we can try to convince Chinese that Gandhian principle of conflict resolution to settle dispute between countries, to settle a border dispute, barter dispute, everything. We can maintain peace and maintain prosperity. To some extent, even Chinese can be convinced that peaceful settlement of disputes, peaceful settlement of conflict is the only way out in the post-American, post-USA world. Yes.
Sure, but that brings us back, to the circle of point that, trust. How do you build trust? So with China, I mean, how?
In security, there's no trust. That's what if you read my articles, I'm sorry to say, like, even though Gandhi is talking about non-violence, but I openly talk about militarization, strong military cooperation between Indian Navy and Korean Navy, India, Korea, Japan, naval cooperation. Here sometimes people don't like my ideas, but I'm a practical person. I'm a very realistic person. Even though I strongly propagate Gandhi principle of peace, but I strongly believe that this is a real politics. In case of real politics, we have to build our hard power also. So I have advocated a naval cooperation between Korea and Japan, cooperation between Korea and Japan, naval cooperation between Korea and India, and having strong military alliance. Because I know ultimately in international politics, sometimes you have to have a hard balance to keep peace. So that is why I have tried. Defense cooperation is one of my core uh, principle of propagation. I strongly advocate military to military cooperation between two forces, between two countries. I strongly advocate alliance between Korea, Japan, and India. You know, I strongly advocate that Korea should advocate to play more active role in the Indian Ocean. Korea should give us more technology, more weapons, more uh, armed force to armed force cooperation. Even though Gandhiji may not like it, but as a real politic, I have strongly advocated a hard power cooperation between two countries. But still, I'm not giving up on Gandhiji. I'm saying we should stop. I have proposed that we should build a strong peaceful settlement mechanism, strong peaceful settlement institutions in Korea, in the region. And Gandhian principle could be the basis of those institutions. No, so here I have propagated two-way approach. One, we build on a law-based order, international order, where we build a new institutions, new mechanism through which our disputes, our differences are settled using Gandhian principle. But at the same time, in case our dispute not work, and we have to go back to the military balance of power, then we are ready. So I propose because as you know, basically I come from a very strong military background. I'm Sikh. I believe in the use of military power to some extent. So, so I cannot give up on this. Uh, I believe in the use. I believe in the use of hard military power to maintain peace. But I don't call it a weapon of first resort. I call it a weapon of last resort. First, we try to build a law-based order, law-based law-based international order in the region. So that is why I have advocated peaceful settlement of dispute. So far, we don't have any institutions, no, any mechanism through which we can settle our differences, settlement of our disputes. Like India, Korea. Now, currently, we have a serious dispute between India and China. So we have signed so many endless agreement with the Chinese. But Chinese, in 1 minute, would throw everything and came to our country, came to our borders. So now who will decide who's at fault? Nobody. Why? Because we don't have any third-party mechanism who can enforce the mechanism. Here, Gandhiji come into the picture. Here, if you listen to me, if you follow Gandhian principle of conflict resolution, where third party play trust-based neutral role, and where both parties trust Gandhiji can help us avoid war between India and China. So we should have a new institutional mechanism where we can settle our disputes between China and India through a very uh, special law-based institutionalism.
And in this, and thank you. And in this, you think that I mean, so India should take I mean, India should take the initiative in a sense. That's what you're saying, and that
Of course,
uh,
of course, we should play because we are power. We are the biggest power. And number two, we are Gandhiji. And we should not wait for invitation. We are people trust us. We are loved in Korea. We are loved in Japan. I'm here, my children. You have to understand the kind of respect they gave us. We should capitalize it. The people trust us. We are a country of peace. We are a country of Gandhiji. People respect us. We should not wait for the invitation. We should do it. That's what everybody expects from us. We should come on our own and try to take initiative to build institutions, build institutions to settle disputes. We should accept the reality that USL world order is collapsing, especially in East Asia. Not much US will not be able to maintain peace in the region for a long time, maybe maximum 10 years. So after 10 years, Americans are gone. We have to settle disputes by ourselves. And if we fail to build our institutions, then there will be war. There will be war because water war or natural resources war for the control of sea resources. There will be so many reasons for war. So until we don't have, so we don't have much time left now. So we have maximum 5 to 10 years left. So during this time, we should bring Gandhiji and Gandhian mechanism to settle disputes, and we should try to convince China, and try to convince Japan, try to convince Korea, and try to convince Thailand, other countries that Gandhi is the answer in the post-American world. Understand? And peaceful conflict of resolution is the only answer. But so far, unfortunately, our diplomats, our policymakers don't believe in Gandhiji, even though they all the time keep mentioning about Gandhiji just for the sake of Gandhiji. They don't sincerely believe that Gandhi is a gold mine, Gandhi is the future. They don't genuinely believe in Gandhi principles. That is the that is what a whole problem. We have ourselves lost faith in Gandhiji. But that is our misfortune. Gandhi is the answer.
yeah, I do. Yeah, I much understand, appreciate. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do kind of pay lip service to Gandhiji and Gandhian principles, and we talk about, we keep the imagery, but we are not pushing the values and the substance of Gandhi,
Yes.
which and partly, I mean, of course, once again, I think a lot of it is being done by the government, by our foreign service, but they have their own limitations. They are bound by government protocols. Fine, we understand that. A lot more could be done there. But at the same time, as a public initiative, that's exactly why we launched this Live and Let Live campaign. That as a public or as civic society, we can probably push out more, or we can push a little bit whatever we can globally
Yes.
towards core values, core simple things of live and let live as a philosophy. And especially now, after the coronavirus and its impact in societies and families worldwide, people are, I think, definitely very much thinking, right? Rethinking, introspecting. So this is a prime time, prime moment, prime innocence opportunity, and a need to bring such values out on the global stage and the global theater. So that's what we are trying as a as a public global campaign on live and let live out there. And what you are mentioning is absolutely understandable, because today, for the sake of our viewers who are listening in, we are discussing about Korea as a case study, we can say, right? As a
Yes.
case study where Gandhian principles can be more promoted, and where Gandhian principles maybe are really needed, also much needed, due to all the dangers and the worries that Lakwinder ji has been sharing. So that's
Yes.
where we are in some sense. So what do you think uh, is happening in Korea? I mean, we touched in the first round about Korean society, right? The basic aspects. Forget the geopolitics. It was about the society, right?
Mm.
And Gandhi principles or way of life uh, being there. How do you see this present generation? I think you'll come back and say they're very stressed. But how do you see the present generation? What can be done to, let's say, attract? Okay, what can be done to attract the attention of the younger generation professionals towards some of the topics that we are talking today?
Okay, okay, very good question, very good. As you know, I'm president of Korea Peace Movement. So many people ask me, what kind of peace? What kind of peace to talk about? Is it what? North Korea, South Korea. There is a no. It's not only about North Korea, South Korea. South Korea society itself is in a very serious crisis, and if something is not done, it will slide into very serious chaos. So Korea is suffering a very serious problem. Unemployment, youth unemployment is increasing. And and people are refusing to give up children. Now the child birth rate is 0.8. It should be 2, 0, 2 point, but now 0.8. It's too low. 75% of Korean young girls don't want to marry. And suicide rate is the highest in the world. Now,
Mhm.
solution is nobody will like it, but I will go back to Gandhi. Gandhi is it. The most important is the character building of a trust in God, God-centered life. So many people start laughing at me when I say that we should go back to God, some kind of moral principle, moral life. No, but to some extent, not having God, moral-based life, God-centered life, there's no alternative. Currently, everybody is just focused on how to get a good job, how to have a good big house, how to materialism, extreme materialism. Focus achievement is just a materialistic achievement. But nobody is talking about living a happy life, successful life, having a serving people, serving a community, serving the society. So we have to reorient them to back to Gandhian values. If you read Gandhian principles, Gandhi talks about moral life, God-centered life, ends and means. Means are as important as ends. So
Do
how
you
can we?
think?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Do you think, fair enough? Yeah, I mean, that's what some basic principles, back to basics in a sense of life and living. Do you think Korean society is at a tipping point where it is open and wanting to or looking for solutions like these? I mean, is it at
Very
a
good
tipping
question.
point?
Very good question. Just the beginning. Just 0.1% people are listening to me. 3 years ago, when I set up the movement, I was not invited to many events, but now I'm invited to many events. It means slowly, my ideas are making a place for themselves. So tipping point means that it's just tipping is just started, just starting. Just out of 100, I will say just a 3%. So just because Koreans are not convinced that extreme materialism, extreme industrialization, extreme globalization will lead to total destruction, total nuclear war. It will take nowhere. But now they're coming back to basics. So now the Korean government is spending a lot of money. Around in the last 15 years, Korean government has spent around $150 billion to encourage people to have children, to encourage people to have family, to encourage people to have marriage. Now, if you go to Korean university, they teach you how to make a girlfriend. Can you believe it? Now in Korean university, Korea is the only university in the world where the Korean schools, Korean teaching tells you how to make a girlfriend, how to have a partnership, successful partnership, because they know ultimately extreme materialism, extreme running after a good job is baseless. So they are trying to base coming back to the life, coming back to a normal life, because they know this road is have no future. So people like me, we started our movement around 3 4 years ago. It was the people were just laughing, but now they're coming back to me, coming to just start saying you're talking about good thing. And I'm not saying that we have reached 5%, but we can say we have reached 3%. Tipping has started, but it's just starting 3%, 4% only. So we can feel the tipping once it reaches 10%. Then you can feel school, colleges, universities, NGO talking about what you're saying today. Okay, so we are the kind of a path breaker. We are kind of pathfinder. So we can say we are the captain of a new movement towards Korea, where Koreans have started looking. Yes, if you don't have family, you have nothing. If you don't have a happiness, you have nothing. You know, so they are coming back to life. Like COVID has taught them very good lesson.
No, that is an amazing, a very interesting overview, Dr. Singh. And by the way, as you know, we run leadership training programs, and we one of our focus areas now in leadership training is happiness. You cannot train for happiness, but we can point out some methods and mechanisms of how to work towards creative thinking, creativity, and what we call as happiness 2020. I don't mean the year 2020. It is happiness 20 oblique 20 or
Yes.
20/20, as in hindsight 2020. So what we are, our trainings are focused on is happiness 2020, that we help you reach or work with you towards a point. as you be maybe students or professionals or any segment, that we equip you with some tools in this training so that you come to your own balance of life. Happiness 2020. I mean, pursuit of happiness as a golden star out there is maybe utopia, not utopia, something like that. So maybe look at a happiness 2020. As exactly you're saying, that racing for money, jobs, pressure, sure, chase some of that, but maybe not as much. Start reducing a bit, balance things out. So that's what we run our programs on. Now, back to, we are reaching almost the concluding minutes of this wonderful discussion. And any viewers, please do put in your comments. Please put in your views. We will try to take in. Okay, we have one, yes, observer, one comment from Devashish Ray from Kolkata in India. He is asking, discrimination against women is widespread in South Korea. What are you talking about? Sure, Devashish, yes, we do understand that. It is there and in other countries also. And these are all, I mean, these are cultures which
Discrimination against women is the core point of our Korea peace movement. We are focusing a lot. Nobody talk about discrimination against women than me. If you read my
are.
post, my lectures, whenever I am invited as a, this is a key point of our discussion. That until we don't stop this discussion, Korean women will never agree to have children again. You know, Korea, to have to convince the Korean women to have children again, to have family again, we have to eradicate this evil from Korean society.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now, Dr. Singh, I mean, we are reaching the end of the time of this particular broadcast, and I hope our viewers have, gotten to learn something or gotten to share something with us. Please keep your questions coming into the chat boxes. We'll try and answer them. And also, by the way, this recording would be available on YouTube. We'll post a link to it so you can maybe refer to it later, and we'll share it also on our Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. Now, that being said, may I invite you, Dr. Lakwinder Singh, to make your, concluding comments when we started out. Actually, I think we did cover some very interesting point, starting from talking about Korean society and wherein, within the society, the questions of Gandhian principles applicability. Then between the North and South Korea, the issue of trust or building trust. Then we touched upon, what role India could play. And I think there a very interesting observation came out that India should be taking proactive steps. There are signals coming from signals from Korean society and Korean government, which India should take steps forward on. And then, of course, the big context of the Northeast Asia, China, the nuclear winter dangers and all. So I hope it has been a useful discussion for the listeners and viewers. Now may I invite you, Dr. Lakwinder Singh, to make your concluding wrap-up comments, please, in about 1 or 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I think I'm very happy that the work I'm doing in Korea is getting attention, which is I always try to get from the Indian scholars, Indian think tanks. So this is a very lucky day for me, and I feel very honored to have you with us. I'm doing this work for the last 20 years, but somehow my work was not being noticed by the Indian community, scholars. But recently, a lot of Indian newspapers, TV channels have interviewed me. So it means that slowly or slowly we are trying to get the attention of uh, Indian intelligence here. That's a good point. Now, coming back to my work, I'm trying to say Korea is our fertile ground. Korea needs us. We should not wait. As a part of our locust policy, activist policy, Korea is very important for us. And Korea is a very high-tech country. Korea is a very rich country. If we develop closer relationship with Korea, it will help us in multiple ways. Not in just one way, just trying to, not just strategically by fighting off China. No, no, just one part of the problem, one part of the solution. Having a strong and viable cooperation with Korea will help us in multiple ways. Our civilizational growth will go multiple ways. I'm talking about civilizational growth. We should work with Korean civilization at that level. Think of my perspective, my vision, my view. So we should. Korea need us. So we should not wait for invitation from Korea. Our diplomats should become more proactive, more see the opportunity. They just not currently they're just focusing on economic trade, economic cooperation. But that's too narrow, too narrow. We are a country of Buddha. We are a country of Gandhiji. We have a lot of things to do, and our country need Korea. So we should develop bigger perspective, bigger Korea, and we can test our ideas. If we become successful in Korea, whole East Asia will embrace us. Believe me, Korea will become example. So we can use Korea as example. Once Korea embraced us, Japan, Vietnam, Philippines, every country will embrace us. So this we should use Korea as a role model. What India can do to build peace, prosperity in the East Asia. Korea is a difficult case. It is some tough case. I'm not saying it's easy to do here, but it's very tough and complicated. But with the help, with the Indian people, Indian think tanks help, we can do it. I'm here for 23 years. If I get a support from India, I can do it. We can use Korea as a role model. Korea is a fertile ground. What India can do in East Asia. If we become successful here, whole East Asia, and once our East Asia policy, look East policy becomes strengthful, then nobody can touch us for next 500 years, for 1000 years, we can flourish like anything. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that wonderful wrap up, Dr. Lakwinder Singh, and look forward to keeping in touch, of course, and maybe following up on some of the ideas that came out in this conversation. Once again, thank you to you, and thank you to the listeners and viewers who got chance to walk by, check by, and see this broadcast show. And we shall be in back with something else also. But today was an important day, being October 2nd, Gandhiji's birthday, International Day of Peace and Nonviolence. And as another step towards our Live and Let Live campaign, I think this was a beautiful discussion. Thank you
Thank
so
you very
much.
much. Once again, I would like to wish you Gandhi Jayanti. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.